Warring, don't block. Do this, he'll come back. Look, here's the deal. When a guy pulls away, when he stops calling, when the texts slow down, most women panic. And what do? They block him. They cut him off. They think, if he wants me, he'll have to fight for me. But here's the truth. Blocking kills attraction. It makes you look emotional, reactive, and completely out of control. If you want him to come back, you cannot chase. You cannot try to force it. What you need to do is nothing. That's right, nothing. Silence, space, indifference. Because when a man feels like you've walked away with your dignity intact, that's when he starts to wonder. That's when he starts to miss you. That's when he comes back. See, men are like cats. If you chase a cat, it runs. If you sit back, relaxed, calm, indifferent, the cat eventually comes sniffing around your lap. The same thing goes with guys. He needs to feel your absence. He needs to feel the loss. And the only way he feels that is if you don't block, don't chase, don't beg, just let him go. When you're centered, when you're calm, when you let him wonder where you stand, that's when the power shifts. That's when he starts remembering why he was drawn to you in the first place. That's when he comes back knocking. So remember, don't block, don't chase. Just lean back, live your life, and let him feel the silence. Because in that silence, he'll hear your value louder than any words you could ever say. Blocking kills attraction. And you need to understand this at a very deep level, because what most people do when they feel hurt, when they feel rejected, when they feel like somebody they care about is slipping away as they react emotionally. They take that little hit to their ego, and instead of breathing through it, instead of leaning back and allowing the other person to come to them, they lash out. Blocking is emotional revenge. It's saying, you hurt me, so now I'm going to erase you. And what happens is, instead of making the other person miss you, instead of making them regret pulling away, it actually confirms to them that leaving you was the right decision. It shows them, while this person really can't handle their emotions, they can't stay calm under pressure. And nothing kills attraction faster than emotional instability. Think about it like this. Let's say you're in a relationship and everything seems to be going fine. But suddenly, the guy starts pulling away. He doesn't text as much. He doesn't call as much. Maybe he cancels plans. You feel that anxiety rising in your chest and your mind goes into overdrive. Is he losing interest? Is he talking to someone else? Is he done with me? And instead of waiting, instead of letting him show you with his actions where he stands, you panic. You say, fine. If he won't give me attention, I'll cut him off. I'll block him, and you think this will make him wake up. But what it actually does is make him breathe a sigh of relief, because now you've made the decision for him. You've ended it. You've slammed the door. And to him, that just means you weren't stable enough to handle the natural ebb and flow of attraction. Attraction isn't linear. It's not this steady, smooth line where someone is always giving you the exact same amount of attention every single day, forever. Real relationships have rhythm. There's closeness, there's distance. There's moments where one person pulls back and the other has to lean back even more to balance it out. But when you don't understand that rhythm, when you panic the moment there's distance and you block or chase or lash out, you break the dance. You step all over their toes. And you make it impossible for attraction to grow. Blocking tells the other person, I'm not capable of handling distance. I can't handle uncertainty. I need to control you in order to feel safe. And control is the opposite of attraction. Blocking also sends a very loud message about your self-worth. Because when you block someone, you're basically saying, I can't trust myself to handle my emotions while you're in my orbit. It's self-sabotage disguised as empowerment. A person who truly values themselves doesn't need to block someone to feel strong. They don't need to delete, erase, or slam doors shut. They just live their life. They remain calm, centered, focused on their goals, focused on their happiness. And in doing so, they naturally create space. They naturally communicate without a single word. I'm valuable. If you want to be in my life, you have to step up. If you don't, that's fine. I'll be okay either way. That energy is magnetic. Blocking, on the other hand, screams insecurity. It says, I need to make a dramatic move to get your attention. Now, here's the kicker. Most people don't block because they're truly finished. They block because they want a reaction. They want the other person to chase after them, to call them up, to beg for another chance. It's a manipulation tactic. But here's the truth. You can't manipulate someone into loving you. You can't trick someone into respecting you. Love and respect come from freedom, from choice, from attraction that grows naturally. And when you try to force it, when you try to corner someone into reacting, it backfires. They don't feel pulled back in. They feel pushed further away. And here's the irony sometimes. The very act of blocking ensures that the door stays closed permanently. Because let's say you block a guy after he pulls back. Maybe he was just going through a stressful period. Maybe he needed space to figure out his own thoughts. Maybe he was testing the waters to see if you'd stay calm under pressure, and instead of passing the test, you fail it. You blow up, you block, and suddenly he knows she can't handle it. She can't stay feminine, calm, receptive. She gets reactive. And what does he do? He moves on. He looks for someone who understands patience, someone who can let him come and go without drama, someone who doesn't need to slam the door in order to feel in control. The person who blocks always thinks they're protecting themselves, but in reality, they're cutting themselves off from the very outcome they want. Because what do you want when a guy pulls away? You want him to come back. You want him to realize your value. You want him to miss you. But he can't miss you if you block him. He can't wonder where you are, what you're doing, if you're moving on, if you've already forgotten about him. No, because when you block, you make it obvious. You show your cards, you reveal that you're hurt, you're angry, you're scared. And mystery dies the moment you show all your cards. Attraction thrives on curiosity, on wondering, on imagining. Blocking kills that in an instant. When you stay unbothered, when you leave the door open without chasing, you give the other person the gift of freedom. And freedom is attractive. People want to come back when they feel like it's their idea, when they feel like they're choosing you again. They don't want to come back because you forced them to. They don't want to come back because you slammed the door and dared them to break it down. They want to come back because your calmness made them miss you. Your dignity made them respect you. Your silence made them wonder. And that only happens when you resist the urge to block. So understand this clearly. Blocking might feel powerful in the moment, but long term it's weakness. It's insecurity disguised as strength. True power is in patience. True strength is in silence. And real attraction grows not when you try to control someone's behavior, but when you let them feel free enough to choose you all over again. When most people feel someone pulling away, the natural instinct is to chase. You feel them slipping and your brain goes into survival mode. You start sending long texts, asking questions, calling over and over, trying to fix whatever feels wrong. You want certainty, so you reach for control. But here's the thing, you can't fix attraction with chasing. You can't force someone to care more by pouring more of yourself onto them. What you actually do is smother the little spark that might have still been there. Every time you push, every time you try to pull them back with your words or your actions, you push them even further away. And that's why the best move you can make, even though it feels completely counterintuitive, is to do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Doing nothing doesn't mean you don't care. Doing nothing doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're allowing space for attraction to either regrow or to die naturally. Because here's the truth. When someone pulls away, they need to feel what it's like without you. They need to experience the quiet, the distance, the gap. And if you rush to fill that gap, they never get the chance. They never get the opportunity to wonder what you're doing, where you are, who you're with. That curiosity, that wondering is what stirs attraction again. But when you flood the space with chasing, when you send constant reminders of your presence, they don't have time to miss you. They don't have time to feel your absence. Think about the last time you lost interest in someone because they were too available. They texted too much, they called too often, they always wanted to see you, and eventually you started feeling smothered. You didn't want to hurt them, but you could feel yourself pulling away. Now imagine that same person, instead of chasing you, leaned back, they stopped reaching out, they gave you silence, they created space. What happens in your mind? Suddenly you're not so sure anymore. You start to notice their absence. You start to think about them again. You might even start to miss the attention they used to give you. That's the power of silence. That's the magic of doing nothing. The ego hates doing nothing because the ego craves control. The ego says, if I just send one more text, maybe they'll respond. If I just explain how I feel, maybe they'll understand. If I just show them how much I care, maybe they'll change their mind. But the reality is, if you were truly valuable in their eyes, you wouldn't have to chase. People who see your value don't need convincing. They don't need essays, explanations, or nonstop effort. They simply choose you. And if they're pulling away, the only thing that can bring them back is curiosity. And curiosity only grows in silence. When you do nothing, you communicate something incredibly powerful. You are not desperate. You're not needy. You're not trying to bend the situation to your will. You're letting things unfold naturally. That energy, calm, relaxed, non-reactive, is attractive. It makes the other person stop and think, wait, why aren't they chasing me? Why aren't they blowing up my phone? Why aren't they begging for my attention? And suddenly, the roles flip. Now, they're the one wondering. They're the one analyzing. They're the one who feels the shift in power. But that only happens if you have the courage to sit in the discomfort of silence. Most people can't handle that discomfort. They think silence means it's over. They think doing nothing means they're losing the person for good, and maybe they are. But here's the reality. If doing nothing makes someone walk away forever, then they were never going to stay anyway. But if doing nothing makes them come back, now you know the connection is real. Now you know the attraction is genuine. It's because it wasn't forced, it wasn't manipulated, it wasn't dragged out of them by your effort. It was their choice. And love that's chosen freely will always be stronger than love that's forced. The hardest part of doing nothing is dealing with your own emotions. Because in silence, all the fears come rushing up. The fear of being abandoned, the fear of being replaced, the fear of not being enough. And most people break in that moment. They give in, they reach out, they chase, because sitting with those fears feels unbearable. But if you can breathe through it, if you can hold steady, if you can let the storm pass without reacting, you come out stronger. You prove to yourself that you can survive the uncertainty. And once you realize that you're unshakable, you don't chase because you don't need to. You don't panic because you trust that what's meant for you won't ever pass you by. So the real strength isn't in saying the right words or sending the perfect text or chasing at just the right moment. The real strength is in your ability to sit back and let things play out, to resist the urge to control, to hold steady in silence. It's because in that silence, attraction has room to grow. In that silence, curiosity takes root. And in that silence, that's when people realize your value. Not because you shouted it, not because you begged for it, but because they felt it in your absence. Men are like cats. And if you've ever been around a cat, you know exactly what I mean. If you chase a cat, if you run after it, if you try to scoop it up while it's not in the mood, what does it do? It bolts, it hides under the couch, it scratches to get away. The more energy you put into chasing that cat, the more desperate you look, the faster it wants to escape. But if you sit back, relaxed, calm, and you let the cat come to you, eventually curiosity takes over. The cat wanders back, it rubs against your leg. It jumps in your lap when you're not even paying attention. That's exactly how men operate when it comes to attraction. If you chase, they run. If you lean back, they come closer. Attraction is always about space and freedom. Cats love their independence. They want to explore, wander, sniff around the edges of the room. And then, when they feel like it, they'll circle back to you. Men are wired the same way. They don't want to feel trapped. They don't want to feel like their freedom is being taken away. If they sense that you're clinging, that you're chasing, that you're trying to control their time, their attention, or their affection, the instinct is to retreat. Not because they don't like you, not because they don't care, but because pressure suffocates attraction. Just like a cat runs from a grabby hand, a man runs from needy energy. Now, most women don't realize they're chasing. They think they're showing love. They think they're putting in effort. They think, if I just give more, he'll see how much I care. If I just text him, if I just plan something, if I just keep reminding him I'm here, he'll finally step up. But the effect is the opposite. Because to him, that extra effort feels like you're pulling on his tail. It feels like you're following him around the house with a bowl of food he didn't ask for. He doesn't interpret it as love, he interprets it as pressure. And pressure suffocates desire. The more you chase, the more he feels the need to escape. Think about the last time you want to be alone. Maybe you were stressed, maybe you needed space, maybe you just wanted to think. And then somebody kept texting you. Somebody kept calling, somebody kept asking, what's wrong? Are you mad? Did I do something? Even if you cared about that person, how did it make you feel? Probably irritated, probably trapped, probably like, can you just give me a minute to breathe? That's what chasing feels like to a man. It makes him feel smothered, like he's under a microscope. And the instinct when you feel smothered is to pull away even further. The irony is the less you do, the more they come around. Just like a cat, if you ignore it. If you go about your life, if you sit on the couch reading a book or working on something else, eventually the cat hops back into your lap. And with men, the same principle applies. If you're busy with your own life, if you're focused on your goals, your friends, your passions, your own joy, that's attractive. It signals that you're not dependent on him for your happiness. It shows that you're not clinging. And that relaxed, independent energy creates space for him to move toward you. He chooses to engage instead of being forced. And chosen love always feels stronger than chased love. Here's the other thing. You teach people how to value you by the way you behave. If you're always chasing, always trying to close the gap, always running after him, what message does that send? It tells him, I don't believe I'm valuable enough for you to come to me, so I need to prove myself. And the second you put yourself in that position, the respect starts to erode. because men respect what they have to earn. They respect what they feel they could lose, and they don't respect what's always chasing after them. That's why leaning back, giving space, and letting him initiate is so powerful. It communicates value without you saying a word. And here's the hard truth: if you chase a man and he keeps running, it's because he doesn't feel enough attraction to stop, and no amount of effort on your part will ever change that. You cannot chase someone into loving you. You cannot chase someone into respecting you. If he values you, he'll circle back on his own. If he doesn't, your silence will reveal that truth far faster than your chasing ever will. That's why doing nothing is always the best move, because it filters out the ones who were never truly interested, and it draws back the ones who were. But the second you chase, you blur that line. You can't tell who's really into you because you're forcing the issue. So remember, men are like cats. The more you chase, the more they run. But when you sit back, when you relax, when you stop reaching for them and instead focus on living your life, they can't help but wander back. Not because you demanded it, not because you chased them into it, but because the space you created allowed attraction to breathe again. And that's the key. You don't win a man's heart by running after him. You win it by letting him feel free enough to choose you over and over without pressure. Indifference is one of the most powerful tools you'll ever have when it comes to attraction. And when I say indifference, I don't mean you don't care about the person. I don't mean you're cold or heartless. What I mean is you are not emotionally controlled by what they do or don't do. You don't freak out if they don't text back. You don't collapse into a panic if they cancel plans. You don't spiral if you don't hear from them for a few days. You remain calm, steady, centered, and that energy, calm, grounded, unreactive, is incredibly attractive because it communicates strength. It communicates self-control. It communicates that your happiness doesn't rise and fall based on one person's actions. When you're indifferent, you're showing that you value yourself enough not to beg for attention. You're demonstrating that your worth isn't tied to whether or not someone chooses you. And that's magnetic because people are drawn to confidence. Think about it. If someone seems desperate for your approval, you instinctively value them less. But if someone seems calm, content, and self-assured, you start to lean in. You start to wonder, what makes them so secure? Why are they not worried about losing me? What do they know about themselves that I don't? That curiosity builds attraction. It pulls people back toward you. Most people, when they sense distance, do the exact opposite of indifference. They overreact, they blow up the phone, they send long emotional paragraphs. They try to explain their feelings, they beg for reassurance. And all of that reeks of insecurity. It screams, I'm not okay unless you validate me. But when you can stay indifferent, when you can sit in the silence without reacting, you send the opposite message. I'm good either way. I'd love to have you in my life, but I don't need you to be okay. That level of self-possession is rare. And because it's rare, it's attractive. The reality is attraction thrives in uncertainty. And indifference creates that uncertainty. When you're calm, when you don't react, when you don't chase, the other person is left to wonder, what's going on? Do they even care? Are they moving on? That wondering stirs emotions. It makes them curious. It makes them think about you when they didn't plan to. And curiosity is the soil attraction grows in. You're not doing anything manipulative. You're simply not overreacting. You're staying centered, which forces them to feel the space and confront their own emotions. Indifference also communicates abundance. It says, I'm not desperate because I know I have options. I know I have value. I know that if you leave, someone else will gladly step into your place. That mindset is powerful because it removes the sense of scarcity. Scarcity leads to fear-based behavior. Scarcity makes you chase, cling, and beg. But abundance creates relaxation. When you feel abundant, you don't need to grab tightly to one person. You can let them come and go because you know your life is full with or without them. And that abundance mindset makes people respect you. It makes them want to be around you. Now, here's the hard part. Staying indifferent when your emotions are screaming at you to react. When you care about someone and they pull back, your natural instinct is to panic. Your heart races. Your thoughts spiral, your stomach knots up, everything in you wants to do something, anything, just to relieve the anxiety. But that's the moment where indifference matters most. That's the test. Can you breathe through the fear? Can you sit in the silence without breaking? Can you trust that if it's real, it will come back on its own? If you can, you pass the test. And the reward is 9 times out of 10, they do come back. Indifference also preserves your dignity, because nothing is less attractive than begging. Nothing is less sexy than pleading with someone to stay who doesn't want to. When you're indifferent, you keep your self-respect intact. You don't lower yourself. You don't try to convince someone of your value. You hold your head high and you let them make their choice. And that, ironically, is what makes them respect you more. People respect those who respect themselves. And indifference is the ultimate demonstration of self-respect. So when you feel the urge to chase, to beg, to prove yourself, remember this: calm indifference is stronger than any words you could ever say. Silence communicates more than paragraphs ever could. Staying centered is louder than pleading. And when you remain indifferent, not cold, but calm, you become magnetic. You create an energy that draws people back. Because in a world full of people who overact, the one who stays grounded is unforgettable. Absence is one of the most powerful forces in attraction. But most people don't let it work because they're terrified of being forgotten. They think, if I don't call him, he'll move on. If I don't text him, he'll forget me. If I don't chase, he'll think I don't care. And that fear pushes them into over-pursuing. But here's the truth: if you're constantly in his face, constantly reminding him you're there, constantly pushing your presence into his world, he never gets the chance to feel your absence. And if he never feels your absence, he can't miss you. And if he can't miss you, attraction doesn't grow. Think about the last time you went on vacation and left something behind. Maybe it was your favorite jacket. Maybe it was a coffee shop you always went to. Maybe it was even your pet. What happened after a few days? You missed it. You thought about it. You realized how much you valued it simply because it wasn't there anymore. That's how absence works. It makes people realize what matters. And when you lean back, when you stop chasing, when you allow that space to open up, he gets the gift of missing you. He gets the chance to realize, wow, she added something to my life. I actually feel the gap when she's not around. That realization only happens in silence. When you chase, you rob him of that opportunity. You don't give him a chance to notice your value because you're shoving it in his face 24/7. It's like someone feeding you food when you're not hungry. You don't appreciate it. You get irritated. But when you stop chasing, when you lean back, you put the plate down, you let him get hungry again. You let him feel the emptiness. And when the hunger sets in, when the craving comes back, that's when he reaches out. That's when he comes looking for you, not because you begged him to, not because you guilted him into it, but because he genuinely felt your absence. Absence also creates contrast. People can't appreciate light if they've never experienced darkness. They can't appreciate joy if they've never felt sadness. And they can't appreciate your presence if they've never felt your absence. If you're always there, always available, always chasing, you become background noise. You fade into the scenery. But when you pull back, when you give space, suddenly your presence has weight again. Suddenly, being with you feels like a privilege, not a given. And that shift in perception is what reignites attraction. Now, here's the part most people struggle with trusting the process, because absence requires patience. It requires you to sit in uncertainty. It requires you to lean back while your emotions scream at you to lean forward. And that's not easy. It feels like you're doing nothing. It feels like you're losing. But in reality, that's when the real work is happening. In the silence, in the absence, in the gap, that's when he starts to think. That's when he starts to compare life with you versus life without you. And 9 times out of 10, that's when he starts to miss you. Absence also tests his interest level. Because if you lean back and he doesn't reach out, that tells you everything you need to know. It tells you that he wasn't invested. It tells you that his attraction wasn't strong enough. And while that hurts, it's also clarity. It saves you from wasting more time on someone who wasn't truly into you. But if you lean back and he does reach out, that's when you know the attraction is real. That's when you know he values you enough to come find you. And that knowledge is priceless. You can only get it by letting him feel your absence. There's also something incredibly attractive about someone who's not afraid to walk away. When you create absence, when you pull back, you're saying without words, I'm okay on my own. I don't need you to complete me. I'd love to share my life with you, but I'm perfectly fine without you. That self-sufficiency, that strength, that ability to let go is magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't cling. They respect those who don't chase. And when he feels your absence, he also feels your strength. He realizes you're not dependent on him for your happiness, and that makes him want to be around you even more. So, absence is not about punishment. It's not about playing games. It's not about making him jealous or manipulating him. It's about creating the space necessary for him to feel the truth. The truth of what you bring into his life. The truth of how it feels without you there. The truth of how much he actually values your presence. And that truth only reveals itself when you stop chasing, when you step back, when you give him the gift of absence. Because in that space, he either realizes what you mean to him or he doesn't. And either way, you get your answer. Dignity is one of the most attractive qualities a person can have. When you carry yourself with dignity, you send a very clear message: I know my worth. I know what I bring to the table, and I will not beg anyone to see it. That quiet confidence commands respect. It's not about arrogance. It's not about rubbing your value in someone's face. It's about knowing deep down that whether someone chooses you or not, your value doesn't change. And when you can walk away from someone who isn't showing up for you with grace, without drama, you become unforgettable, because very few people can do that. Most beg, plead, argue, lash out, or fall apart. But dignity rises above all that. Walking away with dignity is powerful because it shows restraint. Anybody can lose their temper when they feel rejected. Anybody can fire off angry texts, slam doors, or try to guilt trip someone into staying. That's easy. That's what the majority do. But very few people have the strength to stay calm, breathe deep, and simply say, if you don't see my value right now, that's okay. I'm not going to fight for a place in your life. I'll just step back and let you go. That's strength. That's composure. That's emotional mastery. And when someone sees you handle rejection with that level of grace, even if they walk away in the moment, they remember it, they respect it. And often, it's the very thing that makes them circle back later. Dignity also sets boundaries without you having to argue about them. When you walk away gracefully, you're communicating, I will not tolerate being treated like an option. I will not chase someone who doesn't want to be chased. I will not lower myself to begging, pleading, or groveling for scraps of attention. You're showing them your standard without shouting it, and people respect standards. Even if they test you, even if they pull back, even if they think you'll cave, when you hold steady, you prove them wrong. And that's when respect takes root. Because respect isn't earned by words. It's earned by actions. Now, here's what's important. Walking away with dignity is not about punishing them. It's not about slamming the door in anger, blocking them to teach them a lesson, or making a scene. That's not dignity, that's drama. Dignity is quiet. Dignity is steady. Dignity is simply removing yourself from a situation that doesn't honor your value. You don't need to shout, I'm done. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to post cryptic messages online to prove it. You just step back, live your life, and let your silence do the talking. That silence communicates more than words ever could. When you walk away with dignity, you also keep your self-respect intact. Because no matter what happens, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I didn't beg. I didn't grovel. I didn't chase someone who didn't want me. I held my head high and I walked away. That's priceless. Because nothing feels worse than betraying your own standards. Nothing stings more than realizing you lowered yourself just to keep someone who didn't value you. But when you act with dignity, you avoid that regret. You preserve your sense of self. And that self-respect is worth more than keeping someone who doesn't even appreciate you. Dignity also changes the way others see you long term. Because think about it, when someone loses it, when they explode, when they beg and plead, what do you remember about them? You remember the chaos, you remember the desperation. But when someone stays calm, when they walk away quietly, when they carry themselves with poise, what do you remember? You remember the strength, you remember the self-control, and that image sticks. Even if they don't admit it in the moment, they think about it later. They compare it to all the other messy, dramatic endings they've experienced. And you stand out because dignity always stands out. Walking away gracefully also shifts the power dynamic. Because when you refuse to fight for someone who's pulling away, you put the choice back in their hands. You're saying, I'm not here to convince you. You know where I stand. If you want me, step up. If not, I'll be fine. That shifts the weight of responsibility onto them. It forces them to look at their own behavior, their own choices, without you muddying the waters with chasing or begging. And many times that's the moment they realize what they're losing. That's when the respect kicks in. That's when they start to reconsider. The truth is, dignity is power, it's emotional strength, it's self-respect. It's knowing that love can never be forced and respect can never be begged for. When you walk away gracefully, you prove to yourself and to them that you value yourself too much to settle for less than you deserve. And even if they don't come back, you walk away with something more important, your dignity intact. And that will always make you stronger, more attractive, and more respected in the long run. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools when it comes to attraction. Most people think that in order to fix a situation, they have to talk about it. They believe that if they can just explain themselves, if they can just get the other person to understand how they feel, everything will change. But in reality, words often do the opposite. They push people further away. Silence, on the other hand, creates space. And space makes people think. Space makes them wonder. Space makes them question decisions they thought they were sure about. That's why silence isn't weakness. It's power. And when you learn how to use it, you stop chasing and start drawing them back without lifting a finger. When you go silent, you disrupt the pattern. Most people expect a reaction. They expect you to reach out, to argue, to fight for their attention. They expect emotional outbursts or desperate attempts to pull them back. So when you do nothing, when you stop texting, stop calling, stop chasing, it catches them off guard. They don't know how to respond to that kind of strength. And that disruption plants a seed in their mind. It makes them wonder, wait, why haven't I heard from them? Did they move on? Are they over me? Did they stop caring? That's when the curiosity begins. And curiosity is the first step toward missing you. Silence also creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is one of the strongest triggers of attraction. Human beings are wired to desire what's just out of reach. If someone is always there, always available, always showing up no matter how they're treated, they're taken for granted. But the moment that availability disappears, the mind goes into overdrive. Did I push too far? Did I mess this up? What are they doing without me? That uncertainty keeps them up at night. It replays memories in their mind. It stirs emotions they thought they had under control. And the longer the silence goes on, the louder those thoughts become. The beauty of silence is that it forces them to confront their feelings on their own. When you're constantly talking, explaining, convincing, they can ignore their emotions. They can tune you out. They can tell themselves they're not interested or that they're happier without you. But when you disappear, they don't have that luxury. There's nothing to distract them from their own thoughts. And in that quiet, they start to feel things. They start to remember the good times. They start to replay the moments they shared with you. They start to wonder if they made a mistake. And those feelings grow stronger with every day you remain silent. Silence also flips the power dynamic. When you're chasing, when you're initiating all the contact, you're giving away your power. You're saying, my happiness depends on your response. But when you go silent, the roles reverse. Suddenly, they're the one checking their phone. They're the one wondering if you're thinking about them. They're the one debating whether to reach out. The power shifts back to you because you're no longer reacting to them. They're reacting to you. And that shift is often what makes them reach out first. It's also important to understand that silence communicates confidence. It says, I don't need to convince you. I don't need to chase you. I know my worth. And if you don't see it, I'm not going to beg you to. That level of self-assuredness is magnetic. It shows them that you're not desperate. You're not trying to force something that isn't meant to be. You're okay with whatever happens. And ironically, that detachment makes them want you more. Because people are drawn to those who don't need them. They're intrigued by people who are okay on their own. Now, silence isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing games or trying to teach them a lesson. It's about stepping back and letting reality do the work. If there's real connection there, silence will bring it back to the surface. If there's not, silence will reveal that too. Either way, it gives you clarity. It frees you from wasting time and energy on someone who doesn't feel the same way. And if they do care, silence gives them the space to realize it on their own, which is far more powerful than anything you could ever say to convince them. The key is patience. Silence doesn't always get instant results. In fact, sometimes it takes weeks or even months for the other person to feel the full weight of your absence. But every day you stay silent, the curiosity grows, the wondering intensifies. The pull becomes stronger. And when they finally reach out, because most of the time they do, it's not because you begged them. It's because they chose to. They felt the void you left behind, and they realized they didn't like life without you in it. That's the power of silence. It speaks louder than any words ever could. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. If you stop chasing, if you stop begging, if you stop trying to prove yourself, he'll come back. Not because you manipulated him, not because you forced him, but because in the silence, in the space you created, your value starts to shine brighter than ever before. When you're constantly around, constantly calling, constantly reminding him of your presence, he can take you for granted. But the moment you step back and let the void do the work, that's when he starts to realize what he had. That's when your absence begins to speak louder than your presence ever could. When you allow the silence to do the talking, you give him the gift of missing you. And that's a powerful gift. Think about it. When you miss someone, what happens? You remember the good times? You think about their laugh, their touch, their energy, the way they made you feel. You don't sit there remembering the arguments or the little annoyances. You remember the highlight reel. And that's exactly what happens when you give a man the space to miss you. His mind starts replaying the best parts of being with you, and suddenly he feels that pull. That pull is what brings him back. Your value becomes undeniable when you stop handing it out freely to someone who doesn't appreciate it. If you keep showing up no matter how poorly you're treated, you're teaching him that your presence has no cost. He can disappear, he can pull back, he can act indifferent, and you'll still be there waiting. That's not value, that's desperation. But the moment you stop giving yourself away, the moment you step into silence, that's when he feels the loss. That's when he realizes your presence isn't guaranteed, and scarcity always increases value. What's rare is respected. What's taken away is desired. That's how human nature works. It's not about punishing him, and it's not about playing games. It's about holding your ground and letting the natural laws of attraction take over. You're not blocking him. You're not sending angry messages. You're not trying to force him into action. You're simply removing yourself from the equation and letting him feel what life is like without you. And here's the reality. If there was a real connection, if he felt anything for you at all, that silence will echo. It will grow louder and louder until he has no choice but to reach out. Because the human heart can't ignore a void forever. The void works because it forces him to remember you in your best form, the version he first fell for. When you're chasing, when you're begging, when you're panicking, he doesn't see that version. He sees desperation, and desperation is never attractive. But when you disappear, when you let silence take over, his mind filters out the noise and goes straight to the core. He remembers the attraction, the chemistry, the connection. He remembers the feeling of having you in his life. And that's when he starts asking himself, did I make a mistake? Did I let go of something valuable? Those questions eat at him in the quiet hours of the night. And here's the powerful part: when he does come back, it won't be because you dragged him. It won't be because you convinced him. It will be because he chose to. That makes all the difference. People value what they choose. They respect what they have to work for. If you hand yourself over too easily, they take you for granted. But when they feel the void, when they feel the sting of losing you, when they take the step to come back on their own, that's when they truly appreciate you. Because their heart brought them back, not your pressure. Now, does this mean every man will come back? No, and that's okay. Because silence also works as a filter. It reveals the truth. If he doesn't come back, it means he didn't value you enough in the first place. And you're better off knowing that. But if he does, if he feels that pull and he makes the effort to return, then you know it's real. Then you know it wasn't forced. Then you know he came back because your value spoke louder in the void than anything else in his world. And that's the kind of return that actually matters. So remember, you don't have to chase. You don't have to beg. You don't have to prove yourself. You just have to let the silence work. The void is your ally. Because in that emptiness, in that quiet, he'll feel the truth of what you meant to him. He'll feel the difference between life with you and life without you. And more often than not, that difference will be enough to make him come back on his own.